Hello and welcome. Here we are live once again from Los Angeles in California in the United States of America. And after last time, the first thing I'm going to do is check settings and make sure that this microphone hasn't somehow muted itself and make sure that you can actually hear me. Okay, everything appears to be working. I can see green bars moving, and right now no one has told me in the chat that they can't hear me. So I'm assuming that I'm live and we don't have the same technical issue that plagued last time's stream. So hello again. Let's do a big warm welcome, shall we? Welcome to the show. This is, as the title suggests, James Hartigan live from Hollywood. I am James Hartigan. That bit is factually accurate. Strictly speaking, I'm not actually in Hollywood, but I'm literally a couple of miles away. And as I said yesterday when I was talking to Joe on the Poker in the Ears podcast, if Gatwick passes as a London airport, then the outskirts of the San Fernando Valley pass as part of Hollywood. That's my rule. As ever, this is an open forum. This is a Q&A. That's very much how I'm billing it this time around. Very much want to feed off what you guys want to ask and what you want me to talk about. So you do need to be a subscriber to the channel in order to use the live chat today. But remember, it costs you absolutely nothing to subscribe. Just hit the subscribe icon. And also, one thing I would highlight is if you hit the bell notification, the bell icon, that will let you know if I'm doing future live streams. It will let you know if I'm uploading future videos, be they full length or shorts. So if you have any interest whatsoever in anything I have to say, might be worth subscribing to the channel. Hello to Fifth Business, who says, good sound. Excellent. I'm glad because I've been talking now for 3 minutes. So if the sound wasn't good, we have problems. Any, also confirming we can indeed hear you, lol. Following up the lol with an LMAO. Thank you for joining the stream today, which will, because I'm in LA and because it's a subject I know a little bit about and like to talk about, movies is going to be most of the agenda for today's show. Last time around, it was a blink and you'll miss it appearance from my old college friend, Ray. Today, in about 10 minutes' time, hoping to be joined by Andy Gibbons. Ironically, Andy also went to the same college I went to, but at a different time. I didn't know him at university. We met about 10 years ago. He is a huge movie fan and he kind of works in the industry. We'll talk to him about what he does, but he's one of those people who I like to talk to about movies. I value his opinion and he sees a lot of stuff. Sometimes he sees stuff that I haven't seen. So he'll have something to contribute to the conversation. And there's a chance that Joe Stapleton, Stapes himself, drops by as well if he gets the chance. I know he's in transit today because he has got some gigs this weekend. Likes to travel the US doing stand-up, as you know. He's a funny guy. Funny how. So in addition to the audio problems last time around, I only really noticed this properly when I played the stream back. I had taken into account the fact that there were internet problems in LA County in late January. So I downgraded the stream to 720, which these days is considered to be fuzzy vision. Bear in mind, I grew up in the 1980s when it was like, SD cathode ray tube TVs, and now 720 progressive is considered to be fuzzy. But coming to you in full high definition today. So hopefully it's not just the sound that's good, Fifth Business. The picture is half decent as well. So yeah, the video is a little bit choppy because, and I could just complain about the standard of internet service providers. They do deserve a lot of flack because they don't necessarily provide a great service. However, there were extenuating circumstances. If you were able to watch the live stream last time around, or if you watched some of the replay, you'll know that it was not even at the tail end, but midway through some of the crisis that was happening here in LA during the wildfires. And at that point, the Palisades and Eaton fires were still raging and were barely contained. And that was having a knock-on impact on public services in the wider area. I think I mentioned that at one point we'd lost power for 48 hours and decided to skip town. But even last time I streamed, it was a bit of a risk because like the upload speed was negligible. They were obviously restricting services. This time around, I'm hoping that things are are going to be okay technically. And the good news is things are better now here in Los Angeles. The month of January was super weird. It went so quickly, by the way. Here we are on the 6th of February. And I cannot believe that 1 month, that 1/12 of the year has gone already. January went super quick, and it was a very, very stressful, somewhat derailing month, which distracted and stopped people getting a lot of the stuff done that they wanted to get done. But again, I think I said this last time around, and I want to reiterate there, but for the grace of God, because in the grand scheme of things, losing power for 48 hours was a minor inconvenience compared to the horrors that some people had to endure. And still, my heart goes out to all the people who lost friends, family, loved ones, and also, of course, lost their homes and lost many of their prized possessions, many of their memories from over the years. It was a pretty torrid time for this part of Southern California. But interestingly, a couple of weekends ago, there was a torrential downpour. The irony being that, very few places in the world can deal with extreme weather. And here, where they're not used to heavy rain and the drainage systems aren't their best, within an hour, it's like, well, there's floods everywhere, and now there's going to be mudslides. The good news is, in the days that have followed, there have been a few days where it's been overcast and there's been light drizzle. I'm happy about that. I know people come to LA for the good weather, but I'm more than happy to have light drizzle and for the ground to be wet, because no one wants a repeat of what we saw during the first few weeks of the year. The other thing which partly derailed the stream last time around was the fact there were maintenance people in this building and they were testing the fire alarms. One thing led to the other, right? When you're in the middle of a huge crisis and there's the danger of further wildfires breaking out or fire spreading, and you might need to evacuate, you might need to warn people, you want the fire alarms to work. So I'm very happy that they went to the effort of testing and upgrading the alarm system. I just wish they hadn't been doing it while I was trying to broadcast live. Today, there are maintenance guys back in the building. It's not the fire alarms this time. It's water. They're upgrading the water heaters. Now, that shouldn't really impact, although occasionally I hear people walking above. I've seen some water dripping from the ceiling in the communal corridors. So hopefully we will not be affected, derailed in any way by today's maintenance occurrence. I will do, for anyone out there who is a wristwatch nerd, today's What's on the Wrist. And again, I like to do movie-themed watches when we're talking movies. Last time around, I had the Panerai Luminor, which was the Sly Stallone watch from Daylight. So this is Hanhart. This is a German watch, the Hanhart 1954 ES. And this is a modern reissue of the watch that was made famous by Steve McQueen. Not going to go into massive detail about this because you may be aware that I've made various watch videos for my YouTube channel, so you can seek that one out. But the one thing I will say about this is it comes on a leather strap, which it looks pretty cool. And Steve McQueen wore his on a black leather strap with a Bund strap. And I recently swapped this out onto a NATO-style strap, and I've been wearing it so much more because of that. It's just, I think it's because I don't wear a lot of watches on leather straps. Leather doesn't necessarily lend itself to my casual attire. And also, when it's hot and sweaty, you don't want to be wearing leather. But these nylon straps, absolutely great. It has a real kind of military aesthetic, makes you feel like a tough guy. So yeah, I've been wearing this one a lot over recent days. One person who I will say is, I've discovered a watch nerd, someone who would be interested in what I'm talking about right now, is the poker player Jason Koon. And this is where I can get in a plug for the latest episode of the Poker in the Ears podcast. I'll put the details on the screen. If you don't know where to find it, it's on all the podcast apps. You can download or stream it directly from SoundCloud. Spotify is a good place to go. And for podcasts on Spotify, you don't have to have a subscription. It's completely free. But yeah, we recorded that show with Jason Koon yesterday. It's an extended interview, an in-depth interview about his poker career, his life, getting him to the point where he's playing tournaments that cost 6 figures, sometimes 7 figures. I mean, he's been a very successful high-stakes player. He has lifetime earnings of $60 million. I think he's in the top 5 on poker's all-time money list. He's a very good player, and he does some analysis of a poker hand that Joe played recently, which I think everyone, no matter what their poker level is, will get something out of. I certainly did. But yeah, something that came out before we started recording the interview, and sadly, we didn't mention it on the actual podcast. Jason said he's been enjoying my watch videos on YouTube, and we had a brief off-air chat about watches. He was wearing his IWC Big Pilot Perpetual Calendar, so he's got good taste in watches, does Jason Kuhn. But yeah, that's this week's podcast, available to download now. Next week, we're going to be recording an episode with Caitlin Komeski. We've been trying out some new stuff, and look, I'm sure most of you, or at least a decent percentage of people who watch this stream, who watch this video, will be poker fans. Many of you will know the Poker in the Ears podcast. So again, interested to hear your thoughts on not really the new direction we're taking, but some of the new stuff that we've been trying, whether that's having more guests on the show, or whether it's been trying out this idea of having co-hosts, making it 3 people running the show, not just me and Joe, but in this case, we had Spraggy last week, and Caitlin's going to be doing the show with us next week. So any feedback you have on the podcast, would really like to hear it. Any has some feedback on Jason Kuhn. Genuinely likable guy too. I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And hello to Dom Pre, who says, hello, James. Hello, Dom Pre. Hope you are well. I'm good. Really good. Much better place than I was in a few weeks ago. Mentally kind of like on edge through the kind of the fire crisis. So yeah, things are good here. So there'll be a podcast every week for the next few weeks. We'll be on the road a bit in the next few weeks. So obviously I'm in LA now, and we'll be here until Tuesday of next week. I'm then going to be back in London for 10 days. Coming back to the West Coast, we've got the Global Poker Awards in Vegas on the 22nd of February. And then I'll be back in Vegas again in early March, because I will be celebrating my 50th birthday. I turn 50 in March. So, I'll be doing that. Now, I could be accused of plagiarism here. I could be accused of stealing somebody else's idea. Thrilled to have with me on the stream my good friend, and I hope he likes the way I build him, as movie industry veteran, Andy Gibbons. How you doing, Andy?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I don't like the word veteran. I think I'm right. I think I'm right in saying that tail end of last year, you turned 50 and you did the whole 50th birthday trip to Vegas, right?
That's right. I mean, it was, so I hit 50 last May. And so as a little treat to myself, one thing that's always been on my bucket list is I'm a bit of a train nerd. I like trains. So I'm based in London. So I flew to Chicago, and from Chicago got the Amtrak California Zephyr from Chicago to San Francisco, which was 53 and a half hours on a train going through the American West. And then from there, flew down to Vegas. I'm a big Las Vegas Raiders fan, as you can probably have.
Oh, he's got the props.
Testament to here. But yes, I went to.
So you're a big Oakland / LA / Oakland / Las Vegas Raiders fan, yeah.
It was LA when I first started following, but I've bounced
early
around
80s,
yeah. So I went to a game at the Allegiant Stadium, which unfortunately we lost, but we lost a lot of games last year. Went to the Golden Knights at the T-Mobile Arena. Saw Hans Zimmer.
Nice. So you got to see both arenas, right? You got to see Allegiant and the T-Mobile Arena. Yeah.
I was at the
fantastic venues, right?
Yeah, I was at the T-Mobile for 2 nights in a row. I went and saw Hans Zimmer the first night I was there, which was a fantastic concert. And then the next day was the Raiders game, and then in the evening the Golden Knights. So I packed it in.
I was going to say, of all of those things, look, I would love to see an NFL game on US soil. I've been to some NFL games at Wembley, but ironically, I've never been to an NFL game in the US. So I'm jealous of that, but I'm also really jealous that you got to see Hans Zimmer in concert.
It was phenomenal. I wasn't really expecting much going in, but it was a full show. He had a full orchestra. It was a real event, and there were. He's got so many fantastic scores and soundtracks that. As soon as they played Pirates of the Caribbean, and as soon as the dun 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 hit, everyone just went nuts. It was just the score nerds there. So no, a fantastic game, and I lucked out as well, because I'd I'd got a last minute ticket. I was in the cheap seats, like $50 up top. And I don't think it had sold out. So as I'm getting there to go to the escalator to go up to the top level, there were people from the arena handing out free upgrades. So I ended up in the $200 seats. So
nice.
So I can't complain.
Yes, no, absolutely. Well, and he says worth the trip. Beautiful path through the country. So despite the time investment, definitely worth doing.
It was unbelievable. It was lovely. I just sat there, looked out the window for 2.5 days. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and to be fair, I did ask for feedback, and thank you to Don Pre for talking about the podcast. I prefer just you and Joe presenting, just a view. That's fair enough, Don Pre. I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend who that co-presenter is. I mean, Andy, you've been probably, I know you're a busy guy, so I doubt you have time to listen to the podcast every single week. I know you have listened in the past. You're a former Poker in the Ears super fan. In fact, you're one of the inaugural super fans back when it was EPT Not Live back in 2015. Yeah. But yeah, I was just saying at the start of the show, we're trying to do some new stuff with the podcast, like trying out like co-hosts, like having Spraggy involved in the show last week. But some people like that, some people don't.
Yeah, I think you've got to keep growing and evolving, right? If you stay still, you're dead. So no, I think it's a great thing. And I haven't listened to that episode yet. I'm slightly behind. But did Spraggy stay for the whole ep, or was it just sort of
the whole episode? Yeah, and I think I just think it brings a different perspective. It brings something different. And as I said, we'll just try out stuff and see how it goes. But you're 100% right. You cannot just sit still. You've got to evolve. Otherwise, the show can become tired. It can become formulaic, and it can become repetitive. I've just realized we probably need to do a proper introduction, because the first stream we did together was my Bond stream back in the summer, and that was blighted by technical problems. The stream I did in January had a fair few technical problems. It was my internet this time around that was the problem. So hopefully third time's a charm. But the key thing is I didn't really get a chance, because you were dropping in and out, to kind of really set out who you are and what you do. I mentioned that we were at the same college, but at different times. So you studied film at university. And over at various points, you've done kind of different jobs. You've written about film, and you still work with film companies, right?
Yeah, so I started out, as you say, we studied the same course at uni in Canterbury. I think you were a few years ahead of me, but I went when I was older, so there was the overlap there. And yeah, so I started out. I was the editor of the university magazine. So I had gone to university originally thinking about filmmaking, found out I preferred writing about it. So editing the university magazine. Then went in the early 2000s. I started out as a runner. So if there's sort of a gopher at a post-production studio in London, which, funnily enough, if we wanted to talk Gladiator II, was the Mill, which was Ridley and Tony Scott's place.
Oh, we're going to get onto Gladiator II very, very soon. Don't you worry.
Yeah. And so from there, I just found my way into the industry, writing about film, became a film critic and a film journalist. You would do interviews, red carpets, then sort of fell into a job content producing at Sky for about 10 years, left there 3 or 4 years ago, and went back into the production side. So now I work mostly in the promotional side of the industry. So that's working behind the scenes, so doing what we call EPKs, that's electronic press kits. They're promotional material for films. So I'll go on set, do interviews to promote stuff. And then when a film comes out, we have what are called junkets. So for people have probably seen, it's when actors sit in a room with a poster behind them, and journalists every 5 minutes, new journalist. I work on those as well for various companies.
It's Notting Hill, right? Which is probably the most famous example of the whole junket scene,
Boston
of just sitting there asking inane, banal questions from a myriad of publications and broadcasters over the course of 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, exactly that. And you credit to the actors and the filmmakers who are in the chair, because they do get the same question 20-30 times a day. But equally, something that I've really noticed over the last few years in the industry is it's become much more influencer based. So we get a lot more influencers coming in and doing more sort of stunty sort of engagement things. So yeah, it's not just people sitting down for 5 minutes now asking a question. You might have talent asking each other questions or watching video and things like that. So it has freshened it up a bit, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I obviously was like you. I did the junket circuit myself. I did the premiere red carpet stuff, and at one point, I was also a film critic. So we've done similar things in our career paths, and interestingly, both have like poker as well. So there's this weird kind of alignment there. But one of the questions I was asked last time around by someone watching the stream was whether you go into a movie with a different mindset to maybe the average cinema goer. And my answer was, I don't think you can, but you still go in wanting to like the film, right? You still go in wanting to be entertained, wanting to enjoy what you're watching.
Absolutely. I think anytime you always go in with a bit of baggage. If it's unless it's a film you know nothing about or a filmmaker you know nothing about, you always go in. There's going to be a slight preconception, but you need to go in with as open a mind as possible. My take on this when reviewing films or talking about them was a lot of people have gone to a lot of effort to get this made. So I'm going to try and find something positive.
Yes.
And 99% of the time that's possible, and sometimes it's just an absolute car crash and you really can't. But, I'm thinking about when you look at the credits and the people who are involved in making these movies, I'm not going to go out to trash them. I'm going to go in with as open a mind as possible.
Yeah. So I'm just going to answer one quick poker-related question, Andy, and then we're going to get into it. We're going to start talking about Gladiator II, because Paul Davis has asked, best EPT location for atmosphere, in your opinion, thinking Barca or Paris? I don't want to be the guy who sits on the fence, but I'm going to be the guy who sits on the fence. Look, they both have an amazing atmosphere. The reason why I'm going to side with Barcelona right now is because, in case you missed it, Paris has been postponed. So Paris was meant to take place at the end of this month. Sadly, because of legal uncertainty around the gaming license of Parisian card clubs, this is all to do with the French government being in crisis at the tail end of 2024. We had to take the decision to postpone that event, hoping to reschedule it later in the year. So I'm going to say Barcelona. And if we are talking about pure atmosphere, maybe it is Barcelona, because right now it is still the biggest. And it genuinely has that feeling of scale. It's also the original, right? And the original, for many people, is also the best. I will say, and I've said this before, so this is not like a breaking news or anything, there is every chance that if we can bring Paris back onto the schedule, if we can make it an annual event, I think Paris will become bigger than Barcelona in future years, within the next 3 to 4 years. There is my bold prediction.
Can I just drop in? I love the EPT stuff. I would love to go to Prague at Christmas. I think that would be magical.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is the problem, right? They all have their merits. They all have their strong points. I don't like, it's like asking someone to pick their favorite child. I don't really want to kind of have Sophie's choice here. So definitely, as many as you can get to. But I think for many, Barcelona is the pilgrimage because it's where the tour began more than 20 years ago now. So I'll be honest with you, Andy, I put off watching Gladiator 2 for a multitude of reasons. I love the original. And interestingly, when I saw the original, and it would have been in early 2000, I went to a screening. And I went to a screening with no knowledge, no preconceptions. I was surprised that someone was making a Roman era sword and sandals epic once again, because it was a genre that had pretty much fallen out of favor. And I was delighted because it was just so well done. And it was just such a well-written, characterized, fleshed out, emotionally engaging, thoroughly enjoyable film. And I was very glad to see it win Best Picture of the year 2000. And here's the thing, when I love a movie that much and it clearly does not lend itself to a sequel, because spoiler alert, the title character dies at the end of the movie, I never in a million years thought there would be a sequel. So when they announced there was going to be one, I'm like, I don't care. I'm not interested. I don't want a movie to piss on my memory of one of my favorite movies of the modern era. And then I kind of thought, oh, maybe. It's Ridley Scott. I mean, the guy's a talented filmmaker. Then I saw the trailer, and I'm like, this has confirmed all my worst fears. I do not want to see this film. But of course, it comes to the point where people are saying, oh, you need to see it. In fact, again, it's something that came out of the last stream I did. Oh, I enjoyed it. You should see it. You should see it. You should see it. I fucking hated it. And I really wish I'd stuck to my guns and not watched it. I find there are very few positive things I can find to say about the movie, sadly. And yes, did I come into it with preconceptions? Did I come into it with baggage? Yes. I tried to be as open-minded as possible, but this movie did nothing other than fuel my prejudice, and I didn't like a single second of it.
So, as I say, I've got a lot of goodwill towards the first film. I was working at the Mill when Gladiator won the Oscars. I think it won 5 back in 2001. And visual effects, they brought the Oscars back to the studio. We all got to take photos with it. It was a great time. And yeah, I loved the first film. It was fantastic world building, effects like you hadn't seen before. The building of the Colosseum. Truly groundbreaking. And yeah, I'm like you. When they announced Gladiator 2, I was skeptical. But I wanted it to be successful. Like Ridley Scott as a filmmaker, I think he's made some nonsense, but he's made some genre-defining, life-changing movies for people. So I wanted to like it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. For me, the worst thing about it is I just felt slightly apathetic about it all.
That's damning with faint praise, if ever I heard it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. For scale, I love ambitious movies, and I love the fight sequences. I love the size of it, the scale of it. The story was absolute nonsense. I think the effects didn't live up to the first one. That battle, the opening battle at the beginning when he's attacking North Africa, I thought the effects on that were pretty ropey. And the story.
When you consider what a great start the first movie gets off to with that battle, right? Which it just really grounds you in that world. And this was here's a question then. Do you think there was an over-reliance on CGI in this movie? I felt like the first movie used it to enhance certain scenes, and here it was just like, oh, there's a bunch of computer-generated ships sailing on a computer-generated ocean.
I completely agree. The first film, you say it starts off with that huge attack in the forest, and that's all practical. Those soldiers were there. Those extras, those actors. That's physical. That was there. I think the CGI that they had of those ships and the way it was attacking the city, it didn't have the weight and the heft that it needed to be convincing. I think I had the same issue with sequences in Napoleon that Ridley made.
Still haven't seen it.
Year. I haven't seen the extended cut on Amazon. I haven't seen the extended cut on Apple, but I wouldn't.
Did there need to be an extended cut of an overlong movie? No,
there did. To be honest, it needed to be done as a mini-series because the theatrical version that was released, it felt like there were bits missing. But back to Gladiator. Yes, I think there was an over-reliance on effects. Sharks in the Colosseum.
Oh my God! Well, first of all,
Colosseum. Apparently, if there was.
It's so dumb. Do you know what it reminded me of, that scene? Have you seen the Netflix movie Under Paris, which is a completely overblown, ridiculous movie about fast-moving sharks in the River Seine? It's dumb AF, but it is so entertaining and so unintentionally funny, or maybe it is intentional that it's a complete farce. And it's like, but this was doing it seriously. I'm like, but it wasn't the sharks that derailed the movie for me. It was the baboons. The baboons looked so fake. They looked like alien creatures from a different planet.
Yeah, again, I think things were slightly rushed, or I don't want to say that just give it a little sign off, but I think whoever was supervising effects, we have the same problem with Marvel movies. These effects houses are worked to the fingers to the bone and down to the deadlines these days. So I don't think it's through lack of effort. I think they maybe just ran out of time.
Potentially, but putting that to one side, because in the same way that remember when there was the backlash against Thor: Love and Thunder, and Taika Waititi started blaming the effects people. The effects were not the problem with that Thor movie. It was the writing that was the problem, and I kind of feel the same is true of Gladiator 2. And my biggest problem is it's a rehash. It is a carbon copy, and like most carbon copies, a lower quality version of the original story, to the point where you have the opening battle, he loses a loved one, he becomes a slave, he becomes a gladiator, he goes to the Colosseum, and there's all this intrigue, and there's mad emperors, and people want to overthrow the emperors, but the plot to overthrow the emperor is uncovered. I'm like, Did you literally run this through an AI simulator to say, take this story and just put a slightly different spin on it?
I would have loved to. Did you ever hear about the Nick Cave script?
Is this the
Like,
one where he fights zombies?
yeah, and he meets Jesus, and it's all in the afterlife. I would have loved to have seen that movie. But
At least there's an element of originality to that, Andy.
yeah, this kind of felt like when they remade the Star Wars movies, because they did. They just remade where you found a Jedi and then went and attacked a Death Star. Only this time they called it The Force Awakens. So when it does feel like when they are sort of revisiting these IPs and trying to bring them to a new generation, they're kind of just telling the same story, which I think that's why The Last Jedi was why people went against that so much, because that dared to do something new. I would have loved them to dare to do something new here. But what other than meeting Jesus and fighting zombies, what can you do new with a sequel to Gladiator?
And this is the problem, and this is why I say don't do it, but that's not how Hollywood functions, because it's all about taking known IP and leveraging it. And the proof is in the numbers, right? This movie, and by the way, $250 million budget. Even if we assume they spent 150 million on marketing after the effect, it's taken 400 million worldwide. So it doesn't really matter what we sit here and say. It doesn't matter whether critics come after it. And by the way, some of the reviews I saw were actually quite positive. Very surprised that a lot of film critics who I respect thought it was decent and said, yes, I was entertained, to use that line from the original movie. By the way, I am more than happy to hear alternative opinions. If you liked Gladiator 2, if you are a fan of the movie, if anyone out there wants to come to its defense, I will more than happily listen to your argument. Have got Chert watching who says, I'm not as active today because I'm watching Liverpool. I'm assuming that's a soccer game that's being played tonight, Andy.
As an Arsenal fan, I give zero toots about that game, because that's the Carabao Cup semi-final, and whoever wins that, not Arsenal. So I do not care.
Fine. And then we have Lukua who says, who's just chimed in, and hope you're well. We are well. And tell you what, if you've seen Gladiator 2, tell us what you think about it. Well, sorry, Andy, what are you saying?
One thing I would say about Gladiator 2 is that it's a cinematic experience. If you see it in IMAX particularly, you're getting pulled in. It's a big screen experience, and I love the big screen experience. And I think, Jane, we're both a couple of 50-year-old men who have
I've still got a month to go, Gibbons.
We're in that age bracket where we are carrying baggage from the first film. If you're 18, 20, 25 years old and you're going into Gladiator 2 in the cinema with some of the biggest stars, hottest stars in the world, in Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, I think you'll probably come out with a smile on your face if you've just gone in to be entertained.
Maybe that's true, although I do think it leans so much into the first movie, down to using archive footage from the first movie, that one cannot exist without the other. Okay, so I appreciate that this might be a spoiler, but I don't care. The thing I dislike the most about this movie is the retconning of making Lucius Maximus's son. Because to me, that screws with the ending of the first movie. The fact that he is able to rejoin his wife and child in the afterlife, that there is nothing for him in the world anymore. And it's like, well, hold on a second. You actually had a living son? But he didn't. A child he was very protective of because it was the son of his friend who died. And now it's like, well, actually, you're Maximus's son. Not a fan of that. By the way, the plot twist that this guy is Lucius and that he's Maximus's son, it's not really a spoiler because it's so freaking obvious.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan. I mean, I don't know how else you do it, but I agree. It takes something away from the original. But again, I do wonder how much do the new next generation of cinema goers who don't have this relationship with the first film, how much do they care about that? And that's what I kind of think what this is. This is a film that's it's not aimed at us. It's aimed at the people who are going to go see it. I suspect there is probably a significant proportion of people who went to the cinema to see Gladiator 2 who hadn't seen the first. Interesting.
I mean, in an ideal world, and look, again, to quote Austin Powers, and I want a toilet made of gold. In an ideal world, you'd have a movie which can appeal to a new generation and still appease fans of the original and complement the original. And I don't think that this did that. And I am just slightly disappointed in Ridley Scott. But if we look at his kind of output over the last 20, 25 years, it is a mixed bag. Within there are some incredible movies, some great movies, but there's also a few, I don't want to say duds, but I think movies that really you're surprised to see his name on the credits of.
I think one thing that's really telling is that how old is Ridley Scott now? He's in his late 80s, mid 80s.
Yeah.
He's still churning out a film a year. And these are big spectacles. These are big films. And from what I understand, he is still very hands-on on set. He is still calling the shots on these. These don't just have a Ridley Scott name attached. So at his age, to still be so prolific, I don't know if it's a legacy thing, if he just wants to get as much content out there as he can. He's just got all these stories he wants to tell. And if in doing so, then quantity is compromising quality. But that blows me away that this man is still working so hard and so much. And I'm sure he's still advising probably on these Alien reboots that are happening, like Romulus. So, yeah, I think there are going to be hits and misses. I think we do tend to have more misses than hits maybe these days. But you can't deny the man has been an absolute beast of cinema, and the movies he has made will stand the test of time.
No, that is true. You brought up Alien, and just to sort of sidestep and talk about TV for a second. What do you know about this Alien TV show? Is it Alien Earth?
Alien Earth. I don't know anything about it yet. I know it's coming soon, but I don't know anything more than that.
One TV show I would like to shout out, and I'm going to assume that it's on Disney Plus in Europe because it's on Hulu here in the US, is the new show by Dan Fogelman called Paradise.
Yeah, it's just dropped on Disney Plus here.
I'm loving it. And I think Dan Fogelman is a great writer. He did Bolt and Tangled, which are two of my favorite Disney movies, certainly modern era Disney movies. I love Crazy Stupid Love. I could just watch that movie on loop, to be honest with you. And I thought This Is Us was a TV show that just had so much heart and soul that you could not help but love it. And he is famous for having the plot twist, right? Most of his movies have a big twist in them. And this is no exception. And at the end of the pilot episode, at the end of the first episode of Paradise, there is a huge twist which takes it in a direction you do not think it's going in. But Sterling K. Brown, I think, is an incredible actor. The supporting cast are just as good. James Marsden, I'm a huge fan of James Marsden as well. And just the premise, the whole kind of setting of it, and the writing and characterization and performances. This has the potential, I think only 3 or 4 episodes are available right now, but this has the potential to be like a really great TV show that will be in the same conversation as TV shows like Succession, some of the other big dramas of recent years.
Yeah, I've heard. I haven't seen it yet. It's definitely on my list. I've heard great things from people who have seen it. They came out. Funny enough, I did some work last week, and the floor I was on, where I was working doing the junket, literally the floor above us, they were doing the junket for Paradise. So they had the cast. They had the cast.
Yeah, nice.
The showrunners up there. So yeah, they're giving it a big push here, and it's been overwhelmingly positive here. I don't know how many episodes we have available here now, but it's definitely one I'm going to be diving into as soon as possible. I've just finished. It was a bit late to the party. I love my Star Wars, so I've just done Skeleton Crew. So I do have a gap in my Disney Plus list for Paradise.
I'm a bit behind on the Star Wars stuff. I abandoned The Acolyte midway through because I was not enjoying it so much. And just to be clear, it wasn't because of any kind of woke Disney agenda. That was not the problem I had with it. I just didn't think it was very good. And I do think that has been true of a lot of the output under the Star Wars brand on Disney Plus specifically. I thought Obi-Wan was meh. I hated the Book of Boba Fett. I don't like where they took the Mandalorian in season 3. Andor is the one which I love. I think, again, this probably is a similar thing to what we were talking about Gladiator, Andy, that for people of our generation, people who grew up with the original movies, the greatest stuff that Disney has put out during its tenure of Lucasfilm is Rogue One and Andor, because that's
Yeah.
the stuff that probably is closest to the original and ties in with the story of the original film and kind of still has that kind of 1977 feel to it.
Andor's got this sort of this Cold War espionage vibe, and you know where the story is going. It's not going to end well, but it's so well made, it's so well written, so well acted, and I'm super psyched for season 2 that's coming later this year. As for the other content, I enjoyed The Mandalorian, and we've got the Mandalorian and Grogu film coming next year that's going to, I think, round out that story.
Yay.
Boba Fett. I mean, that was Boba Fett. It was. You remember Robert Rodriguez who made Boba Fett? It was Spy Kids. It was Spy Kids in Star Wars, basically, until they turned it into Mandalorian 2.5 and brought that back.
Correct. Well, but also the fans have been crying out for a Boba Fett movie or a Boba Fett spin-off of some kind for decades. They finally get what they want, and they realize that they don't want it for one simple reason. We love Boba Fett. He became such an iconic character because he is an enigma, because he's only on screen for however many seconds, and you start to build your own kind of ideas about where he came from or, you know, what kind of person he may be. When you actually turn him into a fully rounded character, he loses that appeal. His kind of like, this is definitely one of those, don't take a minor supporting character and try and make them the protagonist. This is a classic example of why you should never do that.
And also, if you know, we learned a lot more about Boba Fett in the original, in the first prequels in that series, and that's fine. I don't mind knowing where the clones came from and that sort of thing. But then, you know, he as a bounty hunter goes off, does his own thing. Great. We then meet him again in Empire Strikes Back. But to have him then escape the Sarlacc, go hunting for his armor, become allies with Shennik Fand, and then slowly become a good guy? Boba Fett was never a good guy. No. And he didn't need to be. And I don't see anything in The Mandalorian that would have turned him on that path. So, no, I agree. I don't think we needed Book of Boba. I was excited when it was announced. I was disappointed when I saw it.
Yeah. Two thoughts from Ennie. First of all, says Andor set the bar high, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I think the bar should be set high, and that should be the ambition. You create something of that quality, it'd be great if everything was like that. But you're not wrong about this, Ennie. Star Wars fans do love being disappointed, and complaining is our favorite pastime. And I think the turning point for me was 1997, right? That's when the special editions came out and we all started complaining about those. Then the prequels came out, we started complaining about those. And then George Lucas made further changes to the original movies with the DVD releases and the Blu-ray releases, to the point where when the movie appeared on Disney Plus, hasn't he added a line of Greedo where he says
McConkie?
Yeah. So yes. Yes. And I think what I like is when, if I think of a movie made, ironically, the same year as Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that's a movie that Spielberg has pissed around with over the years, right? He basically did the special edition in 1980, then he did a collector's edition, and then he did a final director's cut. But the great thing is, if I buy the Blu-ray box set, if I want to be the ultimate nerd and pay through the roof, I can have the theatrical cut, the special edition, and the director's cut. So if I want to watch the movie that I first saw at the cinema, if I want to watch the version I grew up with, I can still go back to that. I don't like the fact that Lucas has basically taken those original movies and said, you can't have that anymore.
Well, isn't it? Have Disney not reinstated those?
I have not.
Check, but I thought they might have reinstated some of the original. But I remember having back in the day, having the VHS box set of the originals. And it's they're lost to the mists of time now, but they were a treasured possession, and what I would give to have those back.
I'm clinging on to the DVDs I bought in 2004, which were the special editions, but there's a bonus disc. You get the theatrical cut, and these are just letterboxed Laserdisc transfers from the early 1990s. They're not great quality, but crucially, I have on a digital format, I have on disc the original theatrical versions of those three movies, and so those I cling on to because I'm a nerd, and that's how I want to remember Star Wars. And I don't want to be disappointed. I don't want to constantly be complaining about Star Wars. So, of course, the other great franchise, which I'm a huge fan of, and I know you share that passion as well, and is the James Bond movies. As I
Yes.
mentioned, you and Joe talked to me about the Pierce Brosnan era. I think we kind of like came to the conclusion that it was kind of like the missed opportunities, I think, was the theme of that era. And you can't put all the blame on him. It was a kind of transitionary phase that the franchise was going through at that point in time. But I did highlight during that conversation that the movie that surprised me, the movie which I remember not particularly liking at the time, but actually really enjoyed almost more than Goldeneye when I rewatched the four films, was Tomorrow Never Dies. And I believe that you recently got to work with or meet one of the stars of Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yes, yeah, I did a job a few weeks ago for. There is a Star Trek film on Paramount Plus called Section 31, which stars Michelle Yeoh as Emperor Philippa Georgiou. That character first came in Discovery, Star Trek Discovery,
Yes.
and now has her own spin-off. So yes, yeah, we did a couple of events with Michelle Yeoh, who was lovely. Obviously, recent Oscar winner for everything.
Yeah.
Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah.
and obviously has had the massive success in the last year of Wicked, and we've got part 2 of that coming in November. So yeah, she's on a real high at the moment, and I'm glad to report that she was lovely, wonderful lady to work with and spend the day with, and she insisted on rounding out the day by hugging every one of us. So good times.
The irony is, Michelle Yeoh, whether you know this, she was in Prague just before Christmas whilst we were there for the EPT. And Griffin Benjer, of all people, went to some restaurant in the centre of Prague and was at the table across from Michelle Yeoh. And now, so he got to almost meet Michelle Yeoh. You got to almost meet Michelle Yeoh. So that's two people, kind of like, if we do the 6 degrees of separation thing, I kind of feel that I know Michelle Yeoh. And it's... by the way, I think she may be the strongest, the best Bond girl of or let's say female lead of that era of movie. The thing which, and I think we probably talked about this when we discussed the movie last time around, I don't like the fact that she and Bond get it on at the end of the movie because it comes from nowhere. And I like the fact that if we fast forward 10 years to Quantum of Solace, there didn't need to be a sexual relationship between Bond and Camille. They were just kind of like, working together for a common goal with different agendas. And they kiss and then they go their separate ways at the end. And I kind of feel that that's really where Tomorrow Never Dies should have ended. That these are two agents who can respect each other and you don't really need it. Oh, this is a good line, Fifth Business. I'll give you that one. Crouching Tiger, Hugging Dragon. If we're going to talk about great screen roles of Michelle Yeoh, the original Crouching Tiger movie is pretty good. Another film that didn't need a sequel, Andy, and the sequel is pretty disappointing.
I haven't seen it, and I don't intend to. I'm amazed that you say that the strongest sort of female character in the Brosnan era. You mean she was better than Christmas Jones?
Yes. Okay. Actually, no. I will retract it because here's a question: is Sophie Marceau's character in The World Is Not Enough a Bond girl, or is she the villain? Because if she's the villain, then it's different. And I do think she is. By the way, I firmly believe that she is the main villain. Robert Carlyle is the henchman, and that's very much how. But she was billed as the Bond girl to lead you astray. And again, I know I definitely mentioned this last time around. Christopher Nolan borrowed that plot twist for The Dark Knight Rises. Nolan, huge Bond film, has made no secret of the fact that he would love to make a James Bond film. I don't think it's ever going to happen, by the way. He's too much of an auteur. There's no way that Broccoli and Wilson would relinquish that amount of creative control. But so in some of his films, there are homages that I think in Inception, there's the whole final layer of the dream, which is in this kind of mountain base in the Alps, which is a clearly homage to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But yeah, that plot twist. So yes, if Sophie Marceau is a villain and not a Bond girl, then I think Michelle Yeoh is definitely stronger than Halle Berry's character and definitely stronger than either Christmas Jones or, as much as I like her, Natalia in in
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye.
And the
Yeah.
other thing I'd point out about Nolan is I think it's The Dark Knight Rises. The other thing that he lifts almost directly from a Bond film is that opening sequence where they catch the plane in midair, catch Bane.
That's true. Yes, from License to Kill. You're right.
Straight from the beginning of License to Kill.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
he makes no secret of it, and it's but they say all great artists borrow and certainly pay tribute to. And he said, you know, I these are great set pieces, these are great moments, and it's a kind of like not so subtle nod towards films that he absolutely loves. As ever, guys, if anyone watching takes issue, disagrees with our opinions on any of the films, TV shows we're discussing, or there's a movie recommendation or a TV recommendation that you want to make. Bear in mind, I got caught out because last time around, you guys convinced me that I had to watch Gladiator 2, and I'm still regretting it. Subscribe to the channel, join in the chat, let us know if there is anything that either of us should watch. Maybe Andy's already seen it. How are you getting on with the kind of award season movies, Andy? The films that have like won Golden Globes and been nominated for Oscars and BAFTAs?
I've seen a lot of them. I did some work late last year for the BIFAs, which is the British Independent Film Awards, and a lot of them overlap there. So films like Anora. So I've seen a lot of them, and I'm hoping Anora does very well. I think that was one of my favorite films of last year. I think Amelia Perez is suffering at the moment, given all, there's a lot of negative publicity around it, and I think that's going to affect the voting. So I think Zoe Saldana may well win Best Supporting for that.
So again, I don't want to go over old ground because I talked about Amelia Perez on my last stream, but I do want to get your take on two things. First of all, I hated Amelia Perez before it was trendy to hate it. I want to make that clear. I disliked it from jump. And again, not because of the subject matter, I don't think the songs are any good. If you're going to take this if you're going to take this story and make it a musical, then have good songs. It just felt like, hey, we're being a little bit edgy here. We're taking this kind of like, you know, controversial storyline and we're making it a musical. But the thing that puzzles me the most is how the hell is Zoe Saldana considered to be a supporting actress? She's top billed. She's the lead character. Fact.
These are the foibles of the voting process. I don't fully understand it. When you look at some of the roles. I don't even know what screen time you have to have. I remember Judi Dench winning for Shakespeare in Love for Best Supporting Actress. Yep. She was on screen for less than 5 minutes. So yeah, I don't know exactly how they come to these criteria. It's the same with the Golden Globes, how they decide what's going to be a comedy and comedy or drama. So yeah, it's who knows? I wish I had an answer to that question.
Well, I mean, I asked for contrary opinions. Any backing me up here? I love musical theatre, but you're correct, James. The songs are weak. And again, I say this as someone who loves musicals. I will love a great musical. And Moulin Rouge is a movie that wears its heart on its sleeve and just goes for it in that Baz Luhrmann out there style. And Amelia Perez, maybe it's because it holds back. I don't know. But again, it's the songs and the choreography I just feel are a bit weak sauce, and that lets it down. But it's interesting that since... and it's only been a couple of weeks, just seeing the negative publicity surrounding this movie and seeing that if you look at its score, its audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, its audience score on IMDb, and its audience score on Letterboxd, these are the lowest ratings for any Best Picture nominee in history. And I wonder how much of that is people who genuinely didn't like the movie, Andy, or who may be jumping on the bandwagon of some of the controversial things that one of the stars has said, the fact that obviously there's been some pushback from people in Mexico who don't like the way their country is portrayed, don't like the fact that it wasn't shot in Mexico, don't like the fact that the cast isn't Mexican. There is, some people have pointed out a lack of attention to detail where shooting in Paris, maybe there's some detail in there which is not authentic to Mexico. It's, you know, not like when Kubrick recreated Vietnam in Docklands, where he went to great lengths, as only Stanley Kubrick would, to make sure that you could not tell it was in East London. This is kind of like, you know, not as bad as you can see the Eiffel Tower in the background, but not a million miles away from that.
There's no baguettes on screen. You know, it's not doing the full. What was it? Was it Taken, where you literally established Paris by someone walking down the street in a bag?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the obviously hasn't. I think it came out on a very strong wave. There's a lot of talk of Selena Gomez being nominated for things, and her performance was getting lots of plaudits. I think a lot of people were around the fact of its portrayal of trans characters. But there was a lot of positivity going in. I just think people are seeing a little bit behind the curtain and seeing a little bit more, taking the film less at face value and just digging in a bit deeper, and that's where a bit of negative. I think it's a shame, but I do think it will affect its awards performance.
Yeah, I think that's true. I, like you, would like to see Anora do well because I really, really enjoyed that movie. The film for me, and I'm going to talk about a couple of other Oscar contenders that I saw in the last 7 days, but the film that still stands out for me and is nominated for Best Picture and is nominated for Best Director and is nominated for Best Actress and Original Screenplay is The Substance. As far as originality, as far as on the nose, as far as really going for it, something which I don't think Emilia Perez does, as far as, to use the Spinal Tap cliche, dialing up to 11, or in some instances 15, 16, this movie is wild. I think there's a line on the poster, totally fucking insane, which is almost an understatement.
Demi Moore's having a great year, Paramount as well, called Landman, that she's in, which is a really good show. So I'll put a Taylor Sheridan show. But I love The Substance. I mean, it's this real body horror. I don't know if you remember a film years ago called Susama, with just this.
I remember it, but I don't think I saw it.
Oh, it freaked me out when I was younger. Like this real body horror. But it kind of, the thing I love about The Substance is the way it, maybe it's because I'm of a certain age as well, the way it plays into that sort of, that thing in the back of your mind about, being replaced by the younger person, and am I aging out of things? It's a natural fear. But I think Demi Moore gives a fantastic performance, and I do genuinely think she's going to win the Oscar for it.
Yes, I would be surprised if she didn't. I think it's probably odds against to win Best Picture or even Best Director, but I think I would really like to see it do well at the Academy Awards, which is just a couple of weeks away. When are the BAFTAs, by the way? The BAFTAs before the Oscars?
They're a week on Sunday, so the 16th.
16th, okay.
Yeah.
And again, I know that one thing doesn't inform the others, and something I think we've seen in recent years is sometimes the Oscars deliberately like to zig when everyone else zags, that you can have a movie that can dominate the Best Picture category at every single award show leading up to, and then they give it to something different just to say, well, we're the Oscars, so it's not going to be the same movie that got the Golden Globe or the BAFTA. But I think there is a...
Sorry, just say, I think a film that's going to do very well at the BAFTAs here is going to be Conclave. I don't think it will do as well at the Oscars because I think because the subject matter, I don't think will resonate with Academy voters.
So I talked about this film last time, and I apologize, by the way, for referring to it as The Conclave. I sound like a really old person by adding the definite article, but then I am the person who still talks about the Twitch and the Facebook. But yeah, I liked this movie. I think the best two-word review I can give is solid drama. But, and I said this last time, and it's even truer now, 2 weeks have passed, it's a movie that I am going to probably forget I've seen in the coming weeks or months. I just don't think it's a movie that's necessarily going to go, oh yeah, that was a great film. It's like, yeah, that was good, but it wasn't standout enough for me to be considered the best picture of the year. You may have a different opinion.
I really enjoyed it. Stayed with me, I'll be honest. I think the performances in it. Yeah, I think the performances, Ralph Fiennes and Stanley Tucci particularly. And I have my own I have my feelings about the church, whatever denomination that is. And it's very interesting sort of to go behind the curtain and to see how these choices are made, and the politics and the backstabbing and everything that goes on within it. And I was really impressed by it. I think you could. I knew there was a twist coming. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't see it coming, what it was. But just for me, the design of it, the pacing of it, the dialogue and the performances really blew me away. So I think it's going to do very well at the BAFTA, and I would be delighted to see it do well at the Oscars. I don't think it will do. I wouldn't be surprised to see it get best screenplay. Best original screenplay.
Fair enough. I mean, again, I don't want to go over too much old ground because I talked about a lot of these movies last time around, but I am interested in getting different opinions, and that's a classic example of where you're bigger on Conclave than I am. We're both big on Honora, and this is very timely. Mr. Stapleton, Joe Stapleton himself, has arrived. He is here. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, movie friends. Hello, white guys have opinions. Welcome.
Yes. That's what we do here. We were told earlier on that as Star Wars fans, we love being disappointed and we love to complain, and there's a huge element of truth in that. So we're talking about award season movies, Joe. I know that you've seen a lot of stuff in recent weeks, and at some point we will do an episode of the Poker in the Ears podcast where we kind of get not just our movie recommendations of recent weeks, but we'll try and get some like people in the poker community to offer their 2 cents as well. But both Andy and I are big fans of Honora. You hinted the other week when we were talking that you had issues with this film.
A movie, as much as I liked this movie, the moment I stopped liking it, it took all of that potential energy of me loving it and turned it into hate. I'm afraid that there's a certain point in this movie where it just sort of, it's a big turning point. Basically, I don't know. Do we do spoilers on here or not?
I mean, like, I basically just spoiled most of the plot of Gladiator II. I think I'm doing people a favor by stopping them from watching it. So
people may want to see Honora. All I'll say is that when the heavies show up, there's a very funny, very tense scene, which is great, and then basically that scene is dragged out to like an absurdly long length, which I could just about appreciate in that moment in the movie. And it kept me going and going and going. But then when they begin the next act, basically, and they spend all this time driving around, going places, looking, I found this to be so tedious and so uneventful, not entertaining. I was like, why do we have to see every single second of this? And it took what I loved the movie, loved it, was loving it so much, and made it a chore. It made the whole rest of the movie a chore. And I don't exactly buy the ending of the movie either. I felt like the relationship that ends up developing is a little bit unearned.
Okay. I disagree on both counts. I like the ending of the movie, but to go back to your point about that section of the movie, it's a bit of a cliche, so I was on the edge of my seat, but I found it genuinely tense, and I thought it was very cleverly handled, that it swung from high tension, kind of like being a thriller, to being a comedy, and did it in a very adept fashion. Andy, do you think Joe's got a point that it overstays its welcome, that whole section of the movie?
I agree to an extent. I think this is something Sean Baker, the director, does. He likes to play around with the genre a bit and the pacing, and maybe sort of subvert expectation, so that you don't really, you might be hyped up, and then he'll just pull the rug out from under you a bit. So I get it. I don't think it's a perfect film by any stretch. I really like it. No. I really like the performances, and I think it will do well. But I agree. Not a perfect film, but it's certainly one of the better ones of last year.
You can take, I mean, I can separate out the performances and say, yes, absolutely. Like, excellent performances from just about every single person in that movie. I don't think that the director meandering and or just bludgeoning us with this necessarily should take away from that. I completely disagree, though, James, that I didn't find it to be a thriller at any point. I thought it was always a comedy. And the comedy just kind of overstayed its welcome at that point, and got it was just a long stretch of not advancing the story, and it's sort of not being that funny anymore.
I guess what I meant is I just felt that at any moment the laughs could stop and this could get very nasty, because that the people pulling the strings, that the people in power here are dark people.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff I did appreciate about this movie,
but the kind of the actual, when the people who are flying over.
Of course, but the fact that they never actually flex that muscle at all, I did think was kind of clever and interesting, and that there's really, if I remember correctly, there's never really any actual threats. Like even to the very end, they're trying to butter her up rather than.
No, because again, it's very tough to discuss this without getting into spoilers, but there is a scene where she pushes back and the mother on the steps of the private jet before they're going to Vegas basically tells her what will happen to her if she doesn't cooperate.
Yeah, I don't exactly.
And that's the moment where it does kind of, and that's the point where instead of being buttered up, you realize that she has no option but to basically do what these people ask her to do.
And the people have no option either. I mean, they're trying to be reasonable with her, even if it's an idle threat at some point. You know, if it's your kid's life on the line, you might be like, okay, I'm done playing around now.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking, Andy, that Sean Baker's the guy who famously made a movie with a couple of iPhones, which sounds a lot more.
I'm trying to remember, was that called Lollipop? Or
I mean, it makes it sound a lot more kind of like guerrilla filmmaking than it actually is. Because let's be brutally honest, if you have an app like Filmic Pro installed on your iPhone, it's as good as a movie camera. And if you know what you're doing as a cinematographer, you can pretty much work with any type of camera. So it's hardly like, amateur filmmaking.
But this was tech from 6 or 7 years ago. So even then,
to be fair.
Yeah, I think people have made movies on Zoom now. So the other Sean Baker film I'd really recommend, I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's called The Florida Project.
Florida Project's fantastic.
Exactly,
yeah, really great.
Guy's got some real pedigree. And I think Anora will take him to that next level. I think he will get offered studio pictures. I think he will turn them down.
Yeah. I mean, I actually thought
Tangerine. Sorry, thank you for business. Yes, Tangerine.
Yes.
I mean,
that's the movie
he would
that was
have
made
also, I think he probably has already had studio. I mean, Red Rocket was like one of the best received movies of the last couple of that year. I did not see it, but
just before you joined, Joe, we were talking about The Substance, and a movie you've seen as well. And I read recently that Coralie Fagier had the option to do Black Widow. She was in talks with Marvel to do that movie, but chose to drop out so she could focus on making The Substance. So it is interesting that these independent filmmakers are, being kind of looked at by the big studios to do blockbuster movies.
If I could share a little bit, I think I shared this probably on our other podcast once, but when Joseph Kahn put me in that Pepsi commercial a few years ago, I was lucky enough to get to have lunch with him that day. And I really do look, he can be irritating and he can be like a little out there, but I do think that he's like a pretty unique voice in the films that he makes. Like there is nothing really like he's got a point of view and like it's not standard. And I was like, man, I'd really love to see you get a crack at a Marvel movie. And he goes, all right, what do you think I'd make for a Marvel movie? And I go, $1 million. And he's like, probably not, but like, let's say that it is, right?
Yep.
Let's say that it's $1 million. I will work on that movie for 2 years, right? 18 months minimum. I'm going to work on that movie. And 10% of that goes to my manager, 10% goes to my agent, whatever publicist. Now I'm down to like $600K. I'm making $600K for a year and a half of my life. I can make way more money than that if I continue directing commercials. And not only is now he didn't mention this part, but when I think of someone like Coralie, I'm just like, so you make not that much money. Really, when it comes down to it, sorry for people that are going to be disgusted by that statement, but for a film director to make $600K for a year and a half of work is not a lot. And you're going to be movies are going to be made by committee. She's not going to get to make the Substance Marvel style. Her name's going to be on that movie, and it's going to be directed by Kevin Feige and like the producers at Marvel. So I can really see why it wouldn't be that appealing to do that particular studio movie. Like, what really is in it for her?
I think a good example of that is Chloe Zhao, who did Nomadland. Got all the plaudits for that, rightly so. Then went into the MCU and made Eternals, and that bombed. And
not only did it bomb, by the way, like I won't talk shit about the movie because Brian Firpo is one of the screenwriters and he came on the show and that made me, I really did like Eternals, but not only did it bomb is that, and Ryan lost his house in the LA fires too, I should mention. Not only did that movie bomb, if you want, get in touch with me. I have a link. Sorry, if you want to donate to Ryan. But it's been ignored. Like, remember that movie like ended with like a giant robot like standing out of the earth? Has that been referenced even one time in any of the movies since
No.
then?
I think it may be referenced very soon in a Marvel movie that is coming imminently.
Okay.
So
All right.
watch
Well,
this
which-
space.
Which Marvel movie is coming imminently?
There are several, I think.
The Red Hulk, Captain America and the Red Hulk.
No,
That's
what's
the
the
next
one?
one,
Yeah.
right?
All I'm saying is keep an eye on any Marvel movies that are coming to your screens. in the
Why?
next few
So wait a
months.
second. I'm clearly you are just like dropping breadcrumbs, which is fine. I don't need to get them out of you. But like, what is your? Where are you getting? Are you seeing screeners? Are you?
I'm working events and working on promotional materials and promotional
Cool.
activities.
Awesome.
So
Excellent. Well, thanks for the breadcrumbs.
So one thing I will say, going back to Honora very quickly, is I actually found the pacing of the movie pretty solid. As far as the way in which it was shot and the way in which it was cut, I do like Sean Baker's style.
Yeah.
And as far as a director is concerned and how he told the story in a kind of verite style, I really like that. If there's one thing which I think some of the movies at this year's Oscars, Golden Globes, BAFTAs, all of the kind of award movies share, or some of the big movies share, is annoying, I'm going to use the word, pretentious artistic flourishes. And I'm going to highlight two movies here that I've seen in the last 7 days. The first is The Brutalist, which is a brutal 3 hours, 20 minutes with intermission. And the other is Nickel Boys, which I literally watched last night. These are both good movies, but they have flaws. They are not perfect movies. By the way, I do think The Brutalist is probably now has the momentum and could well be the movie that wins Best Picture of 2024. Adrian Brody probably does deserve the Best Actor Oscar. He is phenomenal. Guy Pearce is excellent. And I know people think that Kieran Culkin is now a lock for Best Supporting Actor, but I would very happily see it go to Guy Pearce. It is an engaging story. It does feel its length. It's one of those movies where, look, I'm not a filmmaker, but if you gave me that and said you got to get 20 minutes out of it, I think I could do it pretty easily. I think you could easily hack it down. There's a lot of fat here. But overall, it's a solid drama, and I very much enjoyed it. But there are a few moments where I'm like shouting at the screen, stick the fucking camera on a tripod, stop pointing the camera at the sky. What the hell is happening here? Where we have these artistic flourishes from the director, which to me are interfering with the storytelling. And of course, you want a movie to be stylish as well as having substance, but anytime you take me out of it and remind me that I'm watching a film, that is detrimental to the purpose of direction and editing, which should to a certain degree be seamless. And it annoyed me. So that is a kind of mark against The Brutalist. It is throughout Nickel Boys. Have either of you seen Nickel Boys by any chance?
I've got the trailer on mute on the screen next to me, but that's it.
Nickel Boys, which I believe is adapted from a Pulitzer Prize winning book, again, is a really
It's unlike
good...
anything you've seen before, says Mike Huff.
So the reason why it's unlike anything you've seen before, Joe, is
Ethan Harris and Brandon Wilson are stars in the making.
So first of all, The Brutalist is shot in VistaVision, a widescreen process that hasn't been used since like the late 50s, early 60s.
It looks like a photograph from your parents' photo album because it's square.
Well, I was going to say, Nickel Boys is shot in Academy ratio, 1.33 to 1. Old school TV, old school movie. I don't know why. It is also entirely shot point of view. There are two characters, the two Nickel Boys of the title, Turner and Elwood. And if we're not seeing everything from Elwood's point of view, we're seeing everything from Turner's point of view. Guess what it reminded me of, Andy?
Peep Show.
Yeah.
Joe nailed it.
You know what? And I've never been able to get into Peep Show for exactly that reason. I'm like, I'm sure I'd get used to it. I find it so obnoxious to constantly have something in my face that I've never got past like 2 or 3 episodes of Peep Show.
Imagine that for a 2-hour, 20-minute movie.
It's a new American masterpiece, says.
No, it's the story is compelling. The characters are interesting. And of course, it has something to say about race and institutional racism, not just in the 1960s, but in American society today. But it drops the ball massively with, I'm going to use the word again, these pretentious artistic ideas, which at some points take me out of the story. At other points, I was confused. And maybe I'm meant to be confused, right? So, well, the character didn't see it clearly, so you don't get to see it clearly. But I'm like, sorry, what just happened? What was that about? What's going on here? It's.
Have you tried being less dumb?
I will try that next time, Joe. But if I take, this is an extreme example in terms of its aesthetic. And I guess I'll salute the filmmaker for doing something different, if not 100% original. But that's an extreme example. But some of the other movies we're talking about here, The Brutalist, Emilia Perez, they are adding kind of bells and whistles. It's a really, really derogatory way of describing what they're doing. But
don't you think that Emilia Perez's chances have been torpedoed now that there's just so much negative press coming out about it? And like,
we were talking about that.
How even before people decided that they didn't like the star, that when you look at this movie, at least in the small out of context clips I've seen, that it is hilarious and not intentionally.
Andy and I were talking about this before you arrived, and yeah, I think look, I didn't like the movie when I first saw it. To me, it's not a backlash. I don't know. When did you see it, Andy? How long ago? Because you get to go to screenings, and
I saw it when it came onto Netflix.
Okay, likewise.
Okay, so you didn't see this in a theater with a bunch of people at a screening, because I would have loved to know what their reaction actually was.
I was so surprised that critics were liking this movie, because I'm sitting through it thinking, I don't get this. Is this an elaborate prank that I'm meant to be in on?
Emperor's New Clothes, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. But again, it's just a lot of these movies, I think, and again, coming back to what you were saying earlier, Andy, about us just being two old guys, but I have no problem with movies being stylish. I mean, again, if a movie tries new things and does it successfully, I'm all on board. But I do feel with some of these movies, if they just told the fucking story and just concentrated on the narrative, concentrated on the characters, concentrated on the performances, a lot of these films would be better than they already are, and they are already good films.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the films we're talking about are sort of the films that are up for award contention, that are, up for Academy and BAFTA. And the films that get noticed there are the more slightly obviously the more art house and the more artistic leaning films. So
don't
I think
forget socially heavy-handed.
Yeah. But these aren't the majority of the films that are up for awards aren't the films. They're not the films that the popcorn crowd are going to be filling the multiplexes on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And both absolutely have their place. And I applaud the bravery of people who are making films on their own terms and how they want to make them. Because a lot of these films, they're not made by committee. These are a lot of these award films, and particularly the independent films that I was seeing for the Biffers. Can it go? Can you go a bit far sometimes? Sure, if you don't have people trying to rein you in or tell cut that a bit, or maybe you're going a bit over the top here. But again, I like creativity, I like ambition, and I won't get bored of those.
Yeah,
that's
fair.
Have you got I know that you probably have a plan for what to talk about. Have you guys talked about what things you think got snubbed yet?
No, that's a good subject, actually. I mean, I think, Andy, you probably see a lot more than I do. I've been seeking out these movies after we already got into award season, so already there is the shortlist, and I'm working my way down it. But was there anything that came out last year, especially, I guess, in the run-up to award season, towards the tail end of 2024, that you're like, why is that not in the conversation?
There are only two. I don't have the full list in front of me, and my memory isn't what it was. But the two things I would have liked to see nominated, I would have loved to see Daniel Craig nominated for Queer.
Right.
I think he was fantastic in that, and it was obviously we're used to Bond, but to see him in that, giving that performance, that role in that performance, I absolutely thought he deserved a nomination for that. And the film I'd have loved to see, I know it was on the long list for international best international film. It's a Northern Irish film called Kneecap. I don't know if either of you've seen it or if you've heard of it.
I haven't, but every single person is like, you gotta see Kneecap. It's so good.
Fantastic. It's about this real life Irish rap group who are promoting the Irish language, who are trying to keep working towards keeping the Irish language alive. And if you haven't seen it, I think it's on Amazon Prime now, certainly here in the UK. I'd give it a go. You'll probably need the subtitles, but I'd have loved to see that get more recognition.
I have subtitles on and everything. I've reached that age. I like to say I blame the sound mix, but no, it's just because, old, losing hearing. What about you, Joe? Was there anything that you were surprised?
Yeah, I'm just gonna rattle off what my favorite movies of the year, and I know that some of these are never gonna get nominated, but I do think that Rebel Ridge, one of my favorites for the year, Netflix movie. I thought that let's see, I had a little list here. As far as movies that I do think that Strange Darling is on my list of favorite movies of the year, favorite movie of like the last couple years. I wouldn't expect maybe it would get a screenplay nomination. But as far as things that actually got snubbed, in my opinion, Challengers being missing from
so I remember you raving about this movie when it first came out, and I was a bit meh on it. Other than the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Finch, I was a bit like Atticus Ross. But I was a bit like again, it was one of those movies where I don't get it. But I am surprised because when it came out, and it came out some time ago, right, Andy? Challengers, like almost a year ago now.
Yeah, probably 8-9 months.
Yeah. So, but it was at the time people were hyping it up as a potential awards movie. But I guess it's hard for films that come out in the spring to still be in people's minds when awards season rolls around.
I felt so strongly about it. Now, something I should bring up actually that both applies to Anora and to when I watch Challengers is that I'm of the belief that like not only does your whole life matter as to how you're going to bring it, like, interpret a movie, and everything about you is how you're going to receive that information. What I've done that day also weighs heavily, or what I still have to do that day when I go to the movies. So when I saw Nora, I was doing a gig I was at a casino gig, and I wanted to get out of the casino, and I went to the movies, and I went to see this movie. And as the movie's dragging on, it's getting closer and closer to showtime for me. So my life anxiety, I will fully admit, is playing into how I feel about this movie, right? Like, this movie's pissing me off now because I want to be out of here, and I'm not that engaged in it.
That's very different to watching a movie at the end of the day where you've just got your evening ahead of you.
Yes. And so for Challengers, I saw Challengers. It was like super late night, and me and a couple of friends had been drinking, and we're like, do we have a movie in us? Sure. And this girl's like, we got to watch Challengers. And I was expecting to dislike it given how strongly she was recommending it. And she was like, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to sit through this. And I was blown away by Challengers. Now, look, that fun situation, all of that plays into it. I thought Challengers was so good that we were going to have an everything everywhere all at once type situation where even though it came out in the springtime, that it was going to be like everyone just raved so much. It was such a phenomenon online. It's very rare that the zeitgeist picks up movies now. It's like Challengers and Wicked are probably the two I can think about for this year. So, I was pretty surprised that it didn't go the distance like that. I guess I was just really taken with it a little bit more than everyone else the rest of the year.
But it's tough. And I think a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once is an exception, where a movie that comes out that early in the year still has the momentum, still is in, and of course marketing has a huge role to play in it as well, right? It's like it's the billboards, it's the screeners, it's the
you never know if like Luca Guadagnini or whatever that guy's name is like pissed off the studio between then and now, and they just decided like not to do any marketing.
Precisely. I remember another classic example of a movie that opened in the first couple of months of the year, dominating the Oscars, was Silence of the Lambs, which opened in February of that year. And at the time, people were, because it was before the Oscars for the previous year had even taken place, and everyone was saying, well, Anthony Hopkins is already the front runner for Best Supporting Actor. Fast forward 12 months, he was in the Best Actor category. And this goes back to something else we were talking about, Andy, about why is Zoe Saldana supporting, the amount of screen time you have to have. That was another weird one. Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs is not a leading role. It is absolutely a supporting performance by Anthony Hopkins, especially when you add up his screen time. And yet, because of the money that was thrown behind it, the marketing, the positioning, he got Best Actor.
Yeah, I would be fascinated. I'm actually going to try and find out what his screen time was for that film, because if it was more than 12 minutes, I would be amazed. So, but it was such
a couple other movies I really liked this year that maybe had a shot. Wait, is Civil War nominated for anything?
No, it's not.
I don't think it is.
So that one could have easily been in the top 10 as far as I'm concerned.
I would say that even if you, yeah, I know. I mean, you and I both loved Civil War, Joe, so I'm disappointed. That's a really good one to highlight that has been snubbed. Even if you're not going to nominate it in the major categories, technically, especially its use of sound, is deserving of some recognition.
Absolutely. Yeah, just the way it's put together. I would be surprised if it was nominated for any of the technical stuff. We probably aren't that across it.
I've been through the entire list of nominations and I did not see it in there.
And this, by the way, this movie would never get nominated for anything, but I was going to throw it out there because I did enjoy it, was Abigail.
Right.
About the little vampire girl. Obviously, that's not going to hit anybody's list, but I certainly did not regret watching that movie.
No. So is it the Golden Globes that introduced that award, Andy, for popular movie, like movie that real people like to go and see?
Yeah, I can't remember what won it this year. I probably
was it Dune?
Wicked.
Oh, Wicked. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so Hannibal
that's what the
Lecter
Oscars
in
need to
Silence
do.
of the Lambs, 16 minutes of screen time.
16 minutes of screen time in a movie that's what, 125 minutes maybe?
Yeah, something like that. And Civil War does not have any Academy Award nominations.
Yeah, well, that's that. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Joe, that is a bit of a snub. Obviously, you joined at the tail end, Joe. I'm going to wrap things up in the next few minutes, but I am interested if you have any, taking awards season out of the equation, any recommendations of a movie or TV show at the moment that you would recommend to people?
Sorry, what the specificity of that was what?
Just anything that's around right now, movie or TV show that you've watched or are watching that you would highlight.
Yes.
You'd recommend.
Okay. Silo season 2 dragged a little bit in the middle.
Yeah. The problem I have with Silo season 2 is I can't get past. I've watched the first 2 episodes and it hasn't motivated me to keep going.
It doesn't really
a very slow start.
Do much else till like episode 9, which is like just the standard for all TV shows now, which is just, even if you have a really great first season, the second season, they're like, let's pump the brakes a little bit here, huh? Let's slow it down. There's only a couple of these novels to go through. But it did end up a really interesting ending to season 2 of Silo that I would love to discuss with y'all. I watched a ton of movies over the Christmas, New Year's break. I'll just rattle off a few that I really liked. I liked one called The Binge, which is sort of a play on The Purge. It was a Hulu movie, and it's a future in America where all drugs and alcohol are banned except for on one day a year, everything is legal. And it's about this teenage boy, his first purge, because it's the first time he's been old enough. People are like, oh, nobody makes comedies like this anymore. This is one of those comedies like that. I watched a movie starring, it's actually quite tragic now. I won't say why, but well, you can probably figure it out. Aubrey Plaza in My Old Ass, I thought was excellent. That would have been in my top movies for the year, for last year. What else did we watch that we really, really loved? Y2K. Y2K was a delight. It's a horror comedy by Kyle Mooney, who's a former SNL cast member. His first movie, also similar vibe to this, but this second one's a little bit easier to wrap your head around. It's basically the first 40 minutes is like the perfect, like just sort of it's 1999 comedy. Like all the references are just bang on. Everyone's on AOL and then it turns into a horror movie about 45 minutes in where Y2K doesn't just it's like Maximum Overdrive. I don't know if you guys remember that movie. So it's not just the software fails, hardware begins to attack everyone. And it's super violent, but very, very funny.
Your recommendations or recommendation, Andy, if there's anything on your list.
So one thing I really want to see that I have yet to see, so it can't really be a recommendation, but I'm hearing really positive things about is the new Bridget Jones movie, Mad About the Boy.
Really?
There's a Bridget Jones movie?
New one.
Is this the fourth one?
Yes. But yeah, it's obviously it's Renée Zellweger, Chiwetel Ejiofor I can't remember the name of the younger lead male, but everyone I've spoken to have been raving about this, saying it's just so much. The third one, this one's so much better. This is really bang on form and a lot of fun. TV wise, I've been lucky enough to see the first couple of episodes of the next Reacher series.
Cool.
And that is coming back February 20th, I believe, on Amazon. So yeah, brace yourself for that.
Fantastic.
And anyone who hasn't seen it yet, I know James doesn't really share the same opinion, but I would urge people, please go see Conclave.
Okay. I didn't not like it, just to be clear. I made my recommendation already, and Evil Roy Slade is on board with me. Paradise. The pilot is excellent, and the second episode is just as good. I think there might only be 3 or 4 episodes available, but I really hope that they can maintain this level of intrigue, this level of drama, and that the writing can stay this good, because right now I'm really into the show and I'm hoping to carry on watching it maybe tonight. I did ask for alternative opinions. Matt Whitby says there is only one Star Wars movie. That's not opinion, that's just incorrect. We may not choose to acknowledge them, we may not like them, but the reality is there are multiple Star Wars movies.
Yeah. And speaking of documentaries, how accurate is Phantom Menace becoming these days? Our entire world is being taken over by an evil empire, and they're taxing the trade routes. All funny.
I know, but are we going to send in Jedis? And that's the question. Are they going to have to swim underwater with the Gungans to resolve this?
Weren't all those annoying battle droids Tesla?
Well, we were talking earlier.
That was reliable.
We kind of like referred back, Joe, to the last stream we all did together about the Pierce Brosnan movies and about the fact that I enjoyed Tomorrow Never Dies. And I do think one of the reasons is because, and I think you were the one who highlighted this at the time, the plot seemed a bit ridiculous in 1997. But now if you look at Jonathan Pryce's character and think, oh, Elon Musk, it's hugely
Bezos,
prophetic.
Musk, whoever. I mean, Rupert Murdoch, there's a whole bunch of people that could have been it. You know what? Are you trying to wrap things up? Because I was such an idiot. The last time we got together and did this, I had the perfect thing for show and tell. Give me 1 second.
Okay, you go and show and tell. One thing I will say is that we talked on that stream, and I'm keen to do another Bond stream. I think we all agreed that probably better to focus on a single movie. I don't know if you remember, Andy, Joe confessed on that stream that he has never seen the George Lazenby movie. He's never seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, my aspiration was that we could have done that stream. We could have got Joe to watch the movie and done a retrospective review of that film just before Christmas last year, because it is the Christmas James Bond movie.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on, and there was no way that was going to happen. But the great thing about Bond movies are you can watch them any time of the year. So I'm hoping that at some point we can reconvene. Joe, you can finally watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I will happily rewatch it, and we can talk about that movie.
I'm in. Okay, so to that on that subject, you know what I like to do when I go to these card stores is I buy old wax. Do you guys know what old wax is? No. I will just buy novelty packs of cards, whatever they got, like Xena, Warrior Princess.
Right.
Like Gremlins 2. And then just, people are hanging out. We want a little activity. We're drinking. Hey, let's open some Gremlins 2 cards. Well, I happen to be in a store that had a GoldenEye 007, and there were 4 packs of cards left. So I was like, I'll buy the rest of the cards, and I want the box. And I don't know if you guys want to do like a quick little rip right here. I'll just do one.
Yeah, let's just do one. And ironically, this is going to lead me on to something in a moment.
Okay, so I have no idea what to expect here. I doubt there's anything of actual value in here. Typically, those, back in the day, these aren't even worth the paper they're printed on.
Some of these Pokemon pool videos, they get huge numbers, Joe. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. If there's something to be gotten, like if there happened to be an autograph in this set somewhere, if there was just one and it's never been found, then yes. All right, here we go. First card up. We've got the tank.
Okay, that's the tank on the rail tracks, ready to blow Janice's
this
train
one's
off
called
the tracks.
Making a Stand.
He's going to derail us.
We have got a little Ms. Apprehension, this one's called.
Okay,
Bond arrives on the French warship and races to the helipad.
That's in Monte Carlo.
Okay, so now this next card has been turned around backwards, which in sports cards, when you have a backwards card, it is autographed a lot of the time. So it's called Onatop's Scheme. It is not autographed. It was just a nice little...
Oh, nice picture of Xenia Onatop attending the launch of the Tiger helicopter.
We've got Bond with a gun to the back of Cracker's head.
Yeah.
He only knew, was it 3 people who used that gun? He's killed 2 of them.
And these, by the way, this is just awful. This is just a picture.
What the hell is that? Is that the satellite coming out of the water in Cuba?
Beneath placid waters, but it's an awfully framed photo. It is just bad. Here's Bond falling out a window, I think, or Natalia.
That is Bond jumping out the window in St. Petersburg just before he gets in the tank, which then shoots the train off the rail tracks.
And then we've got Electric Inferno and Click, Click, Click.
Oh, good old Alan Cummings.
Okay, so is that Natalia after Severnaya has been destroyed?
Exactly.
And there is Boris trying to get the code. Tell me, Natalia! And then he knocks the pen out of her hand. It explodes. Boom.
So yeah, so that would have been more relevant during our Bond stream, but
that's fine. Well, I tell you what. So we're going to do a stream about On Her Majesty's Secret Service. There will be a sequel to the Talking Bond stream. There will be episode 2 of Talking Bond. But as far as trading cards are concerned, bear with me because I think they're on the shelf above me.
Oh, here we go. Andy, did you bring your cards?
I'm sitting in my office and I've got various mementos and trinkets. I don't have trading cards. I've got a lot of Lego.
I'm going to give you something next time I see you to open next time we're on stream.
This is a tease. We're not opening anything today because I think this is going to be on a separate stream. But when Joe and I were in Las Vegas back in November for the NAPT, one of the Gold Pass winners who got to play in the main event and got to audition for the big game on tour, who, by the way, we rejected, very kindly gave me a gift. He gave me 6 packs of these Razor Poker trading cards.
Oh, damn.
From 2006. Look for autograph cards of your favorite players. Limited edition,
sick.
Tournament-worn autograph memorabilia cards. There are 6 cards per pack. These are, 2006 edition. So this is deserving of its own stream, Joe.
You should probably, James, I don't want to burst your bubble, but you should probably save that for the next live show that we do and have someone from the audience come up and open them on stage is probably the best way to do that. But maybe you can do one on a regular
not really sure
stream.
I can wait until episode 400 of the podcast in 2027. But
I bet we do a live one before that. But
okay, well, there we go. Well, a reminder, and that's a good note to remind everyone that the Poker in the Ears podcast is coming out most weeks.
Oh,
there is a new episode out today. And there will be another episode next week with Caitlin Komeski. We're going to be at the Global Poker Awards, so we'll be summarizing that very soon. We've got a book club episode coming up, asking people to read an actual book. I ordered my copy from Amazon yesterday, and it will be delivered in the next 24 hours. Blood Game. That's the name of it, right, Joe?
That's the one. Blood Game by Jeff A. Boats.
Absolutely. So, yeah, new episodes of the Poker in the Ears podcast. Often we would be talking about live streaming. But the irony is we probably don't have a live stream for at least another month or two. We will be in Dublin at the Irish Open. EPT doesn't kick off because of Paris, which we talked about earlier on. EPT doesn't really kick off until Monte Carlo at the end of April. It's been a while. I think we're going to be rusty by the time we get to the next poker event, Joe.
It's entirely possible. Yeah, it still feels a long way away. But what I know will happen is that when it's there, it'll be like, oh, I thought this was months away, and now it's tomorrow. So, and that's what always happens.
Anything exciting coming up in your world, Andy, that you can talk about? Because I know some of the movie stuff you work on is top secret.
Nothing too exciting. I think the next thing I've really got on my calendar is I'm hopefully going to be on the red carpet for the BAFTAs, which is a week on Sunday. So I will be there talking talking to some people.
That is something that I haven't mentioned, which again, it was a Christmas present from my girlfriend. We're going to go to the Elton John Oscars party this year, so that should be pretty cool to actually be in Hollywood on Oscars night. One thing I realized the other day, Joe, yesterday in fact, is I have never been in the US for the Super Bowl. I've never been in America on Super Bowl weekend. So to actually watch the game without having to stay up through the night is going to be quite novel for me.
It's hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully, I don't know. It feels like our culture wars are so heated right now that I'm like nervous about the commercials.
Nervous for the commercials. Wow. As much as I love Taylor Swift, and I'm sure there will be plenty of Taylor Swift on TV, I will be rooting against the Chiefs purely because I don't want them to do the three-peat. I don't want them to be the first team in NFL history to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. But anyway, this is all stuff which we'll talk about in the future. We'll do another Bond stream. We'll do some card openings down the line. Joe, thank you, because I know you're traveling today. You got stand-up this weekend. You're going to Tahoe, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Anybody in the Tahoe area, I'm playing Harvey's Hotel and Casino Tahoe, 9:30 Friday night, 9:30 Saturday night. It's about an hour from San Francisco. It's about an hour from Reno as well. Turns out I was kind of an idiot and thought they were closer to each other than that. But and there's supposed to be a huge snowstorm, so come on out.
Wow. And Andy, thanks again for giving up an evening to talk about random movie stuff. Really appreciate it. And as I said to you, I still owe you dinner for the last stream, so you're going to get a much better dinner. I mentioned I'm in London.
Double the dinner.
From the 10th. So if you are around during that time, hit me up. Let's just try and get together.
Yeah, let me know. I'm sure we'll be able to find time.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you both, guys. And thank you, everyone, for watching.